YouTube, what it do? It's your guy CJ, back with another video, back with another episode of the CJ Wilkins YouTube channel. I really appreciate y'all so much for tuning in to my channel, supporting my platform, man. It really means a lot to me. I want to have a conversation with y'all today, man, if I could, about the importance of knowing how to always think for yourself. There's a lot going on in the world right now. You got war, political unrest, There's a lot of hate crimes going on in the media, But always ask yourself this question right here, because regardless of where you stand politically or how you feel when you see racial injustice go on in this country, regardless of what side you stand on, right? You have to understand that all the content and the information that you consume in this world, and it doesn't really matter unless you live in a communist, country that can kind of control or dictate certain things. Everything that you see, everything that you watch, everything that you listen to, right? Understand that it was curated for you to be able to see it, right? Someone had to, how do I say this? Somebody had to create not just the content, but someone had to allow the content that was created. They had to allow for you to see it. So everything that you see is designed in mind to get a certain reaction out of you. It's designed to get a trigger response from you, right? And I just want you all to be mindful of that, when you go out into the world and, you've been strolling on your phone and you may see a video, or you may see an article about a story, or you may see a news report about something that just happened in your town, in your city, your state, and it affects you emotionally. Whether this is, about a president, or if this is about a young black man who was unalived, or if this was about the economy, if this was about illegal immigration, or ICE agents, or whatever riveting story that they put out there to be used in a sense to divide multiple groups of people, whether it's right or wrong. You gotta understand, somebody created that someone allowed that creation of content to be allowed on your airwaves, on your timeline, on your social media timeline, in your algorithm, on YouTube, wherever you go to consume videos, information, content. The things that you're seeing, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, someone had to allow that to be on there. And regardless of this being a fact, and this is always going to be a fact, there's always going to be an allocation of content being disseminated to get people to respond a certain way, to react a certain way, to think a certain way, to move a certain way, regardless of the information that you consume or you see or you witness. Try to work very hard in this life if you could. Always keep the ability about you to always think for yourself. Because you gotta think, you gotta remember, a lot of the information that is disseminated is designed to get you to think a certain way or to act a certain way. So when you're viewing these type of information, when you're viewing this type of content, you gotta understand, okay, these are things that are designed to get a certain reaction out of me, or to get my mind to work in a way that it may not work. You know what I'm saying? To get you to think in a way that you may or may not think, but it's trying to manipulate something within the way you believe and you think and you act. Even if it's something that you'll see it and you will agree with it, or if it's something that you see and it triggers you a little bit, try to always, if you can, think for yourself. Try to have your own formation of thought, Don't be so easily influenced. Don't be so easily inundated with the ideas and beliefs of someone else. Why? The importance of being like CJ, why is it so important for me to have my own thoughts and my own opinion? The number one thing a person can do to a gullible person, to a person who is easily penetrated by a difference of thoughts and opinions, the easiest thing to do to somebody like that is manipulate. And you can do very insidious things from a power standpoint if you're able to manipulate people. On a small scale, people can get like manipulated in relationships, in marriages, at their job. People get manipulated all the time, But on a deeper scale level, right? When people are manipulated at scale, the ramifications for that is a horrendous reality, And you've seen it throughout history. Like groups of people are easily influenced. You can go back to Jamestown in the 1970s with Jim Jones, and I'm not talking about the rapper. Some of y'all heard Jim Jones and said bowling, but nah, man, not the rapper. Jim Jones was like an evangelist back in the day. I want to say he was in Indiana, somewhere, but anyway, he had this cult, and he eventually convinced hundreds, if not thousands of people to drink this poison, right? And they call it, like the term drinking the Kool-Aid, if you're old enough to have ever heard this term, drinking the Kool-Aid, it came from that whole Jamestown incident with Jim Jones. He was able to manipulate people who followed him to believe, for whatever reason, if they drink this poison, right, if they sacrifice themselves, there would be some reward for it. Manipulation. I am a historian of all music, but I love black music as a black man, of course, right? Gangster rap that segues into drill rap. Before drill rap, you had like the Jezebel rap, the city girls, the Cardi B's, the Meg Thee Stallions, the Little Kims, even back in the day, music that highlights the absolute lowest common denominator of the black community, music that highlights the most debaucherous, degrading, disgusting, barbaric, genocidal type music imaginable. Music that hypnotized generations of young black boys to go out and catch homicides and kill other black men. Music that convinced young black girls that being a hoe is okay. Being a Jezebel is all right. Being a bust down for the streets is a-okay. That's manipulation through music, which influences groups of people to behave in a way that's unbecoming. So, in fact, many stereotypes come from how people act in response to media and entertainment. And before you jump in the comments and say, you can't blame music, or you can't blame entertainment, or you can't blame politics or whatever, it should be the parents' job to, instill things into their kids, and you can't let BET raise your kids. You're right half of the way. You 50% right, you're almost there, but the thing you don't consider is how influenceable people are in general, regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of gender, regardless of socioeconomic standing. People are easily influenced by scale. It's a small group of people who are able to look at something and see it for what it is, regardless of what's being told, right? Because a lot of the media that we consume, a lot of the music that we consume, in the grand scheme of things, and I don't want to get too far off track on this, but I really want to get this off my chest, right? Most of it is a scam, you know. It's a scam, you know. That new Young Miami song, Spitting That, you know, she's ironically talking about scammers in the song, and of course that's the black people song of the summer, you know. But it's a scam. And you gotta think, man, like from even if you're not from a world of criminality, or you may not come from like the underworld or the streets or whatever, you may come from a different lifestyle, but you can still get what I'm getting ready to say. When you think about a scam, there's a few things that you need for a scam to be able to work. And this is what they do in social media. This is what you see on your timeline. This is what you see in movies on Netflix. Like if you go to the top 10 movies on Netflix right now, or TV shows, and you are a married man or a married woman, all the top content that everybody's watching is involving infidelity. It's involving the wife cheating on the husband cheating on the wife, beating on the wife, you know. It's this like Sodom and Gomorrah type thing, you know. And that's what you're supposed to watch in your leisure on the weekend. You and your wife want to stay home and pop some popcorn on a Saturday night. The number one movie in America is debaucherous for you and your family in real life. But it's just entertainment. But the three things you need for a scam, right? First thing you gotta have is you gotta have a target. You gotta have someone who is gullible enough to believe a certain thing to be true, right? Then you need a product to sell to the fool. And I'm not calling you a fool, like if you're listening to this, but just for the example purposes, right? You need a product and or a service to sell, or an ideal to sell to the fool. So you got the idiot, you got the propaganda for the idiot, and the third and last thing you need for a scam to be successful is you need to create a qualifying reason for why the idiot needs the propaganda. You see this all the time in politics, you know. The economy is bad because of illegal immigrants taking all the jobs. The streets are not safe because of black youth in Chicago. That's the only reason why. That's the only reason why these inner cities are not safe. Because only black crime exists. No other group does crime. You always have to have the idiot. You got to have the propaganda to sell to the idiot. And then you have to have a justifiable clause that the idiot will believe in to consume the propaganda. That's how you manipulate. And I'm not telling y'all this to go out and do dark energy stuff or to manipulate that to your advantage in a negative way. You can manipulate the world in a positive way and it'll work for you, you know, but just get into the habit of thinking for yourself. Because when you're a person who cannot be, if you're a person who cannot be manipulated, you're very powerful. You know, you're very valuable to this world and to yourself and to your family. And the amount of power that comes with not being a person who can just be told something, and whole dynamic about them is like, you know, kind of controlled, almost like a puppet, you know. You want to be a person who can think for yourself, create your own opinions, have your own thoughts about what's the problem and what's the solution to the problem. You know, it's okay to be influenced by people, man. It's okay to read and get new forms of understanding and new forms of knowledge. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about reading a meme about something online and you taking that meme as truth versus doing the research for yourself to find out. Because social media is like Wikipedia, man. Everybody got a microphone. Everybody can go and edit information and speak on information. Most of the time, it's going to be skewed or false in some way. But if you're able to take information, consume it, research it, and then disseminate your own thoughts, ideas, and opinions on it, I think you'll go to the top of the moon and back. All right? So, yeah, that's all I got, man, before I start rambling on about something else. But as always, it's your guy CJ. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I appreciate y'all for checking into the CJ Wilkins YouTube channel, and I'm out. Peace.